Welcome to NTR Radio on Sound Force Anubis.
And I'm VZ Mark II.
K-God's going to be taking a break for the show for a little bit. We'll see when he comes back.
Yeah.
So before we get into it, here's how you get involved with the show in real time. If you're listening live, you go to ntrradio.net, click on the chat link there. You enter your nickname in the box and hit the button and join us in the IRC channel. Alternatively, you can take your favorite IRC client, you point it at irc.ryzen.net, and join us in the pounder hash SLC media channel. In addition, you can get at us on Twitter at TAnubis, at VZMK2, at NTR_radio, and as always, the email address to get involved with the show is ntrradio@gmail.com. So, what's been going on?
I got stuff to talk about that
Excellent.
I've been watching and rewatching.
I haven't watched a whole hell of a lot except for the Sonic the Hedgehog movie.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet. I'll if I catch it.
It's very good.
Okay.
It's good, both as like let's be real, it's a kids movie, obviously. Yeah. But as far as video game movies go, it's exceptional. Like especially like considering what it was gonna like when you saw that first announcement, right?
Yes, I know.
The fucking
we all know
the wild design for Sonic. Yeah, especially considering what it could have been. It's really good. And the sequel, obviously they're gearing up to put out the sequel as well, so I'm looking forward to that.
Any reference to Sancho?
No, but they did reference the Sonic drawing.
Yes.
Yeah. There is that reference.
Okay, so I finished second season of Quintessential Quintuplets. And I have to say, I really like that show. I don't know if the ending was the strongest, but I would say it's probably the best harem I've seen in years. But I'm also now watching a show from 2017, Hinako Note.
Oh yeah,
I don't know if you remember
think
that.
I caught the first episode of that, maybe the second as well. I remember liking it.
Yeah, I actually recommend it, especially if you watch the Blu-ray rip, because it has more ecchi in it.
Naturally.
It's kind of like is your Gochiusa, is your rabbit, but with a little bit more ecchi to it. Preluding to
foreshadowing
to our foreshadowing our topic. Yeah, that's
foreshadowing is when we tell people exactly what we're going to talk about in the main topic before we get to the main topic.
So the new season started. So I have 4 shows that I'm watching, and 3 are naturally ones that you all know. Maid Dragoness is great. I actually like it a lot more even than the first season. They not to given the tragedy that happened to the not only the studio but the first director, but this new director for the show just like really up the bouncy for the animation. No, I mean there's like it's even in the opening, like there's a lot of bouncing, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
The other one, of course, the new Love Live, which I like, obviously, naturally.
I keep forgetting there's a new Love Live.
Yeah, but which, by the way, you can watch either this or the one from last year, and not have to worry about continuity.
I'm with you, but my problem is like I kind of want to, like I want to watch them all. So like I said last time, they need to take a break. They need to stop. They need to just cut it out for a second. Let me catch up. Like same thing with Gundam, by the way. They need to take a break. It's just too much. It's too much anime.
Up. Careful of that paradigm. Careful saying that paradigm of there's too much anime.
It's
I
too
get
much
it. I
anime.
get it. There's too
Fucking
much of a thing that you would.
it.
There's too much of something that you enjoy
It's a
all at
good
once.
problem. It's
I
a
understand.
good problem to have. It's an excellent problem to have. It's like let's keep going with this too much anime shit. Let's go. I want there to be too much good anime. That's a like. Imagine complaining that there's too much stuff you want to watch.
It's like the most first world problem.
Yeah, like that's a yo. If that's your biggest problem in the anime space, you're
There's too
doing
much
pretty fucking
anime for
good.
me.
Oh no, what the real issue and I'm gonna take this excuse to get on on this issue again is the seasonal anime culture. Because everyone feels the need to watch everything as it comes out every
I
season, and
totally
nobody
understand that. And
fucking
I'm the
it's
guy
not.
that watches a lot, but
Yeah, but you
I'm also
don't you
willing
don't
to
you
drop.
don't well, you don't have a pathological need to watch everything as it comes out. Like you're
Oh
watching
no,
Hinako
no.
no that came out like 18 years ago. It came out 4 years ago, but
Yeah,
it might as well be 18 years ago. Like
yeah.
you one of the 8 people who still talks about Hinako no, and and it's like
Well, here's why I'm for watching stuff this season, because of what happened with coincidental quintuplets, where I missed out, and it's like as it was coming out, and it's like now I'm watching it, and it's like okay, I have to get those things. It's like it's like I just barely got the one girl I wanted. I'm gonna try to get the other one, and the
oh yeah,
third one I
yeah.
have.
If it's a merchandise thing, I can kind of understand it. But then you also have people like me whose entire business model is seeing stuff that's probably going to be big, or just buying like getting nice figures and then having them on hand to sell. Like I had
Yeah. Oh no, I got you.
this really nice figure of Kirari and Anzu from Cinderella Girls, and I had that for like 2 years before it sold. But yeah, I can get that's basically the only aspect I can get for like the impulse to watch anime seasonally. Other than if you like literally actually enjoy watching stuff week to week as it comes out.
Yeah. Well, so I don't enjoy it. I'm just kind of with it. I drop it. I have no. And especially for certain shows that have that are kind of like just wait for the Blu-ray.
Yeah, yeah. That I especially don't understand watching seasonally. Because if it would be one thing if the discussion online surrounding it was decent or valuable. It really isn't. Like unless you have a group of people who you know aren't shitheads to talk about stuff seasonally. I
Right.
don't really think the discussion tends to be valuable. I do. eh, Any any and all valuable discussion will, if it happens, will happen after the fact.
Well, I think there's like podcasts that are for like like the Shonen Jump thing, or it's like it's yeah for like I'm sure there's like for One Piece, and they discuss each week's episode
Yeah, and I can understand that, but I would
and
get burned.
Naruto and
I
all
would
that.
get burned the fuck out on that podcast real quick. If I was doing that podcast, I would get burned the fuck out on that real
Yeah,
quick.
it sounds kind of uninteresting if you're just recapping each episode that you have to watch.
But that's just me. There,
Yeah.
I I definitely believe that there are people who straight up follow One Piece week to week, and that's what they're all about. And I support that because that's what they do. What I'm talking about when I talk about seasonal anime culture is this this need to like you watch stuff seasonally not because you enjoy watching stuff week to week, not because this particularly is an anime that you want to like watch as soon as it comes. Like you're like how I was with uh, bottom tier character Tomozaki. Like
Mm.
like pumped, waiting for that anime to come out for months, and now it's coming out, and every week I'm scrambling to watch it because I'm so pumped that it's coming out. Unless the show is like that for you, uh, I I I question if watching anime seasonally is the best way to watch anime.
Well, that's
That's what
definitely
I'm
for
saying.
me. I get pumped for the stuff I watch.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. People who are legit pumped to watch whatever they're watching, that's cool in the gang. But what I'm also saying is that like there's that, and then there's also the seasonal anime culture. Whereas watch the stuff week to week. Don't really take any time to process it. Just watch the anime week to week, and then move on to the next 4 or 5 anime you're watching week to week next
So
season.
basically, seasonal anime vultures
I wouldn't even
or
say.
or locusts.
Yeah, locust would be a better term for it.
So I got two more other things to other shows.
Go
One
for it.
is the the uh the new Get a Robo Ah,
Mm,
which I've been really liking. And the thing is, nobody else has been enjoying it, for,
really?
and I don't get it why. I I mean, okay, it's not the 2D animation is not very good. But that's you know what? It's TV level production. The 3D is actually fine with it.
Mm,
I don't know what people are complaining about with it, and it's weird. It's something you wouldn't think I would be into because it's like the anti moe show,
well, I mean, if
which is
I'm Task Force MOE guy, and I like Legend of the Galactic Heroes, so the, here, you ever notice that there's a lot of like heavily moed up people who also watch the same shit that the anti-moe brigade habitually watches, like the
oh yeah
the
yeah.
the stereotypical anti-moe brigade anime is the same shit that we also watch. Like I also grew up watching stuff like Robotech and Zoids and Gundam Wing on Toonami, but I also grew up watching things like Sailor Moon and
That's the
Tenchi
thing.
Muyo on
Those
Toonami,
people don't seem.
whichever one seems to forget was on Toonami. Tenchi Muyo, it's like zany, ecchi, fucking cute girl anime was on Toonami with the rest of the robot shows that everyone else remembers.
That seems to be a thing with the anti moe peoples. They just can't comprehend someone liking both.
Well,
I'll never get understand that.
well the moe the moe people cease to be a straw man when you realize that they're just other people who like anime. They just happen to also like anime with cute girls in it, as opposed to just liking robot anime or just liking your Cowboy Bebop, Ghost in the Shell stuff. That's why, like, I'll talk about these shows that like people like hold up as the some of the best anime.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I can't,
burger.
and like I'm never shitting on these shows because they're legitimately good shows. But the issue is that people for some reason don't think that people who like cute girl anime also like this other stuff, and it's weird.
Burgermeister in the chat says, "I'm watching Sketchbook, a cute girl anime from 2007. That's something I need to check out. I know about it,
I think
and the
I
main thing
watched an episode of that way back in the
I
day.
know one girl's from Canada, and that's the thing. That's the thing. If anyone ever brings up that show now, that's the only thing that they ever bring up. Oh yeah, her name was Kate. That's right.
Yeah, I remember I watched an episode of the show way back in the day.
Oh, and okay, so one more show I gotta talk about
Yep.
for the season, and this is the one I said this is the show for you. Um, it's called Mother Goddess of the Dormitory, and I didn't even like know about it on the season chart. Um, yeah. First off, a lot of fan service, a lot of like just right there. It's like that you might have to download the like the version 2 subs or whatnot
Naturally.
to get, but and so it kind of has the similar premise to that one from a couple years ago, the one about the Shota living with the that sort of motherly dormitory character.
That I think that one was called. It was Sunahara so something, I believe.
That's it. That's
Yeah,
the one.
I
It's
remember
very
that was the one. Well, maybe there were like one or two others, but that was one of the very few anime that season that wasn't picked up for streaming. I don't think it's
no, but
licensed
Funimation
now, but
has it.
yeah, Funimation has it, but I don't think it was picked up for streaming. Not for a
Right, right.
simulcast at least.
Which, by the way, this one's picked up by Sentai, so you
Oh,
don't have to
High
worry
Dive. There
about.
we go. Yeah, I'm seeing it right now on High Dive. Excellent.
Yeah, A&N hates this one. They are eviscerating this one.
That's more foreshadowing.
Yeah. Yeah. So,
Is it
yes,
ever a
similar
surprise, really?
Yeah. No, and of course I'm not surprised. But yeah, it's a Shota, and all the girls want him. And there's a girl that looks like this is why I say the show's for you. There's a girl that looks like C2 from Code Geass with glasses and a lab coat.
All right, I was already on board, but now. Let me actually add this to my queue in High Dive because I do want to check this out. So we have something approximating news. It's not it's not used news to you or I, VC, and it's probably not going to be news to a lot of people who habitually listen to NTR radio.
People with working brains.
But
yeah,
there was a Giga did a video where he visited JC Staff.
Yes. I didn't actually watch it, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so in part of that video, one of the people at JC Staff.
What is about? I'm sorry to interrupt, but what is it about JC Staff giving access to like outsider people? Because they did that. Remember, they did the thing with Danny Chu.
Yeah. JC Staff is probably, and I don't have knowledge, but if I were to speculate, JC Staff is probably either they're more open to give like tours and interviews than other studios, or that's just the studio that it more likely it's probably just the studio that Geeks Plus, which is the agency that represents Giguk and the Trash Taste podcast and all of them.
Yeah.
Geeks Plus probably has some kind of relationship. Well, Geeks Plus and or the parent company of Geeks Plus, which I believe is Kadokawa.
Because I wonder what the hardest studio to get like any sort of access to would be like.
I was gonna make a joke there, but I was gonna make a Yamakan joke, but I lost it midway. Whatever studio Yamakan's at, so.
Well, he's not
cameras don't get fucking
anymore.
He basically got kicked out of every studio he even worked for, even the one he started.
Yeah. But yeah, JC Staff.
But so one of the staffers at JC Staff, and this is the one comment that blew up. While we are aware of overseas fans, we generally don't make changes for their sake. And again, this is something that anyone listening to this podcast already knows. Like, we've been saying for a while that the the overseas market is a secondary market. It's not it's not the kind of thing it's not the kind of thing where the Japanese studio is making the anime to appeal to Western anime fans. That very rarely happens. Which, which by the way, everyone should understand that this is the smart way to go about it. Because if you've got a bunch of anime fans in the United States, and the president of Aniplex of America has talked about this. We've talked about this interview before. If you have people in the United States that like anime, they like anime as it exists. Like, they already like anime. Why would you change it? It maybe you're trying to appeal to more of them, but in changing it, you're gonna piss off the people you already like, the people who you already appeal to, in favor of appealing to a more fickle audience that's only on board with what you're putting out because you changed it. So the moment it stops being whatever you changed it to, they're gonna jump ship, and they're gonna jump ship pretty fast.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It's like, what have we kind of zeroed down? Well, what does the Western audience want?
They want
This
fucking anime. That's what we've like. That's what everyone who actually thinks about this stuff has zeroed down to. But, and as we'll discuss in a little bit when we get on the main topic, a lot of the people in like opinion leader positions don't seem to understand that there isn't a massive demographic difference between Japanese anime fans and American anime fans in terms of what they're looking for out of anime. If you're looking at the rank and file of anime fans, they're generally all looking for very similar things, regardless of where they are. It's when you get to a point of people who are in positions of influence who are looking for very specific things out of anime and aren't finding those things. That's when that skews the outlook, because it starts to look like people are looking for something that people at large are not looking for.
Yeah, the only time that there was a sort of divergent was that period where, again, there was this time, that pre-Pokemon era, that was sort of predicated on the USA's OVA, the OVA boom here. That already kind of shifted in Japan by then.
True.
But and even then was mostly predicated on the type of stuff Yoshiaki Kawajiri made. You know, like Wicked City and what's the other one? Ninja Scroll.
Right.
A lot of that, like, hyper-violent, hyper-sexual stuff, which was the sort of stereotype until Pokemon came. Pokemon and DBZ, and basically the Tanami era.
Yeah.
And Sailor Moon.
I would say that basically what happened between, say, like, late 70s, early 80s in America, and especially now, but late 70s, early 80s into like the 90s and the late 90s, and accelerating through the 2000s and into the 2010s, is that the US market caught up with the Japanese market in more ways than one. So, like, not only are, like, we caught up in terms of how fast we get anime. So now basically everything that airs on Japanese television anime wise every season gets streamed over here more or less same day. So that's kind of caused a shift in.
I mean, that would have blew my mind if you told me that like decades ago. Like,
Yeah, like
one day you'll be able to watch the same exact things that Japan has with subtitles.
it was because like not 15 years ago, it was still the primary way of watching anime was either happening to catch it on TV or buying it on discs years after it had already been like said and done on Japanese TV. So fast forward from there, from that like 2006 era, fast forward a couple years and like fast forward half a decade, and it's the beginning of the simulcast era. And not only since the simulcast era, now everything is simulcast. So the the tastes have sort of caught up because previously, back in the era you were talking about, the American OVA boom, the the breadth of content was a lot more limited. So
Which kind of sort of painted the like this is what anime is.
yeah, so like if you were an anime fan in that era, there was kind of only a there was a much narrower range of things that you could be into
Don't
and
get me
also be
wrong,
an
I
anime
love
fan.
that stuff. I love that like ultra violent and ultra sexual stuff
Well,
where
yeah,
it's like
like we were saying earlier, is like there's a there's a wide there's a wide range of content that you can be into, and very few anime fans that I've seen at least are just into like one very narrow range of content. That happens very few times. But so from there, the the range of content expanded throughout the throughout every basically every single era to where now we get the full range of content because everything gets simulcast, everything gets released.
I mean it was partly true because there was this guy, I don't know if you heard his name, Fred Patton.
The name sounds familiar, but I'm not. I wouldn't know who that is just by the name.
Um Fred Patton. I'm trying to remember what he did. I was going to say Frederick Schultz, but he was a different guy. I think Fred Patton worked on the original Astro Boy.
Hmm.
Even gave it the American theme song. But he was like the guy that's sort of like anime is animated science fiction, which again, kind of true and not.
Well,
Because
like
yes, there
if
was a lot of sci-fi stuff coming out of Japan and being brought over, but there was also just a lot of not sci-fi stuff that just was not known here.
oh that's kind of that's kind of speaking inside the era, because even back that like around that time, this is my understanding that on both sides of the Pacific, in Japan and in the US, a lot of anime fandom grew out of sci-fi fandom. Like even if you look at the people who founded Gainax, all of them were sci-fi nerds before getting into anime. I believe if you look at the CFO, the like early real big anime club, I think a lot of them were sci-fi nerds that got into anime through its sci-fi work. So he's not correct, but I understand why he would say that, because a lot of what got people into anime was the sci-fi stuff. But so this is getting off track. My point is, uh, the JC staff guy is 100% correct. He was never incorrect. Every with very few exception throughout the history of anime. Your favorite anime is probably probably a result of the Japanese anime industry being left to its own devices. and not specifically trying to appeal to Westerners. Unless your favorite anime is is like the Big O2 or one of these Marvel Madhouse shows or Redline or something like that. With very few exception, your favorite anime was probably not created with you in mind, but you still like it anyway. So the the whole idea, and this is something that we've been on since before NTR Radio. This is one of the first articles I had put up on Task Force MOE back in the day. It's like there's no need to appeal to the Western fan base specifically, because in doing that you're actually not appealing to the Western fan base. But so we'd mentioned opinion leaders, and we had mentioned Anime News Network and whatnot. I got a question for you, VZ. This is going to kick off our main topic. Can you tell me give me the name of one moderately to very prominent anime critic in the Western fan base who actually likes and appreciates ecchi?
I would say John of Anime Nation, and the guy that used to do the anime on DVD, maybe.
Was that Chris Beveridge? I think
That's
his
it.
name.
Oh, and the guy for J List.
Oh, Peter Payne. I wouldn't consider Peter Payne to be an anime critic. He's
No, he does write blogs though.
He writes blogs, but I guess maybe we need to define an anime critic, but I wouldn't consider him to be an anime critic.
An anime reviewer and journalist.
An anime review, like someone who speaks critically, but that's maybe not even the right word for it, about anime.
But yeah, there is no one for that. There really isn't anyone for that. And I don't know, and we're going to try to figure out why.
So this is a thing I've noticed throughout, like, from when I started blogging back in like 2010 up through now.
Oh, I noticed this even when I was even before, when I was on Toy Box DX, and apparently I was the guy defending otaku there.
Yeah, so I've noticed this shift, and in my opinion, it's kind of annoying, but I've noticed this shift. Back in, I think this was around 2016, 2017, whatever the year I started Iyashike was, I think I wrote this article in that first year. I wrote an article called "No, Anime Isn't Killing Fan Service." Look, I've mixed that up. No, fan service isn't killing anime.
Okay. Actually, I'm sorry I'll be right back 1 second.
All right, so I'll give the listeners some background. I wrote this article called "No, Fan Service Isn't Killing Anime," and the reason I wrote this article was because I'd seen an article by the Anime Man, who's an anime YouTuber, talking about how fan service is killing anime, and talking about why fan service is killing anime. And so part of the argument was part of his argument was that it kind of diminishes anime's value to the critics, which number one, I don't think is particularly true, but I also don't think matters. But the issue that I found with it, and where that links to the topic of this show right here, is back like back not 5 years ago. It was is fan service killing anime. Now, like that entire section of YouTube is a-okay with ecchi, they're a-okay with fan service, but sort of in like a jokey, memey way.
I'm
It,
sorry
it,
about
it
that.
would it would be one thing if the it would be one thing if it was there was a genuine embrace of, okay, there definitely is a sexual element going on in a lot of anime, and it's okay to like that genuinely. It would be one thing if it's that, but
That's yeah.
a lot of how people interact with fan service and ecchi elements in anime is they do it in this jokey, memey sort of way. And that's the shift that I've noticed, is that now that's okay. Where previously it wasn't okay to, like outside of certain circles that where that kind of stuff is like largely permitted and enjoyed and appreciated in those circles. Outside of those circles, it just wasn't something that you talked positively about, lest you get clowned on by other people who probably actually like the same stuff. But now it's, if you're making a joke and a meme out of it, that's okay now.
But
And
still no general,
well, so like
genuine.
it's it's two things. It's you like you can't, if you talk about liking ecchi and liking fan service and whatnot, it, again, outside of certain circles, you will be assumed to be like making kind of a self-deprecating joke. And it's that in somewhat of a minor thing that I've noticed is that when there is some kind of effort to genuinely express appreciation for ecchi fan service, the erotic portions of anime, there's there's a some kind of there's an impulse to intellectualize it. Like they have to make it into something, like they have to explain it in a way that makes them sound smart. So
Mm,
so it doesn't seem like it's kind of a base instinct.
yeah. Or you could be Bennett the Sage and take on a completely different persona character whenever reviewing an anime with ecchi elements.
Yeah, like
He does a guy called Suave with a bathrobe, an open bathrobe.
yeah, like it's
And it's like, how about just review it as a normally? But no, you got to take on a persona.
and that's the thing, is like
Yeah.
it's a weird, like it's weird, like no, you don't do that with other elements of anime. Like you don't take on a complete alternate persona when you're talking about when it's time to talk about robots. Like you don't change around the way you like you don't fall into a self-deprecating mode when when it's time to talk about like shown in action. Like, you don't do that with other elements of anime. The only reason people do it with ecchi is because it's sexual and
Oh,
I,
Burgermeister, have you ever gone over the use of the term pandering when it comes to fan service? Oh, many a
oh
times.
yeah, yeah. It's one of those words that is only used because it has a bad connotation when you could use the word appeal, and it would serve the exact same purpose, except the part where it's supposed to insult the people who like it. But and I feel like it's the same kind of thing with the I'm otaku trash sort of thing, where if nobody had ever called someone otaku trash because they liked the wrong cartoons and meant it, nobody would get the idea in their head to call themselves that as a joke in order to deflect that sort of like in order to deflect that sort of commentary about them and their tastes. So if nobody had ever like actually shot on someone for not actually literally shot on someone, but if nobody had actually did made if nobody made fun of someone for liking ecchi anime, we wouldn't have this paradigm of nobody can be genuine about liking ecchi anime. It always has to be couched in some sort of joke or some sort of meme, or it has to be so over the top that nobody would be able to like nobody in their right mind would recognize it as genuine as like oh this person doesn't really like ecchi anime. They're just doing this for as a joke. This it their desire their enjoyment is so over the top. Their method of expressing their enjoyment is so over the top. They couldn't possibly be being real about it. It's like this like Melon Pan, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like
unfortunately.
Mel. Well, Melon Pan's doing his thing. I can't hate on it. He's got the money to do it. Uh, but like nobody's. If you're shitting on Melon Pan, you're going about your entire life wrong. Like I don't particularly like Melon Pan, but like it's like shitting on Lil B, the bass god, if you're in hip hop. Like if you're in hip hop and you're shitting on Lil B, the bass god, the guy who came out with the song called Ellen DeGeneres, like there, it's so over the top that why would you even hate on it? Like I think the paradigm is bad regarding Melon Pan. I think I put it this way. I it's not that I don't like Melon Pan, it's that I don't like the fact that a lot of the the way I see it, the reason the reason what he does is okay is because it's so extreme that everyone knows that it's a joke. Whereas if someone were to do the same thing, maybe a couple rungs on the ladder less extreme, they would they would be looked at as weird, but more weird than Melon Pan, because he's obviously doing it as a joke. Whereas the guy who's not
Well,
like
I got another
deep frying
example.
his
Remember,
anime figures is
I got another example.
actually
Remember,
doing this shit for real. Well, the person who is actually
no, but in the 2000s, there was
not
that
doing
guy.
this so not doing this so in such an extreme way, that person is somehow weirder than the guy deep frying his anime figures because that
I
person's not
remember that.
joking.
No, but remember in the 2000s there was that guy who walked around with his Dakimakura,
Yeah,
and there was even the interview,
yeah,
and then that became like the face of like this is what Moe fans are like.
yeah, yeah.
Like
Like that
even though in
somehow.
Japan he's considered like an extreme,
Yeah,
out there example.
somehow that guy is more weird than the guy deep frying his anime figures, or somehow what he's doing is not okay. Versus like take if you were to put it up to 12 on a 10 scale, and he were to start deep frying his anime figures. So
No, but he used to go to he would go to like the cafes with his and like share the drink with the pillow.
yeah, and here's the thing that I for some reason nobody realized around that point. Nobody does that. Like nobody actually does that. The number of people who in the real world who do that is maybe like 5. That's like when people talk about cringe weebs, but don't understand that there's maybe 14 actual cringe weebs on the planet, and the rest are just either teenagers or people who actually have legitimate mental problems, and we probably shouldn't be making fun of those people.
Mm.
Like, have you ever encountered anyone actually acting like a cringe weeb who was above the age of 18 and didn't actually have real life mental problems? I don't think I have.
No, I mean I might have been considered a cringe reeb, many, but you know what? Then you sort of reflect like, okay, that's a little too out, But even then, I was never like a cosplay person, even though I have no problem with cosplay. Is a great way to express your love of anime.
I mean, even many quote unquote cringe weebs in cosplay spaces, teenagers,
Yeah.
like legitimate teenagers, like 16. Like nobody really actually acts like that. There's maybe 14 people on the planet who actually act like that and don't have something wrong with them. But it's weird that like people get these perceptions of how people act from relatively extreme behavior they see online.
Well, it's like the sort of it's like, oh, look at this extreme example. Oh, we could clickbait this.
Sure,
You could clickbait this.
But
put them and then that becomes the example.
well, like there's a lot of people who are so who have such a lack of understanding of how marketing applies to like especially online news outlets that they look at that and think that that's an actual example of something that actually really happens a bit like that actually happens more than twice like it's again it's the same thing with the proliferation of cringe weebs. Nobody actually acts that way. All the people who were videotaped acting that way at cons, they're either all teenagers. They're either A, teenagers, or B, have some level of autism, guaranteed. But because
I was gonna say this, but I think I should, only because of like the example. In college, I used to say like, "Yeah, I'm Japanese," in my mind, type of thing.
yeah,
But you know what?
Number
You
one,
look back, I was like, that's kind of silly to say that.
yeah, you don't do that shit anymore, and that's the issue.
Yeah, and even though it's funny, they just like 2 weeks ago they had that guy, you might have heard about his Ollie. No, was it Ollie London? The guy
yeah.
that changed his had plastic surgery to look like the K-pop.
Well, that's an entire different paradigm. Well, no, that's a different paradigm. That's far beyond the scope of this podcast. But and so Burgermeister in the IRC is bringing up a good point. People like to accuse people of being cringe weeb for such relatively normal hobby things like owning anime figures. So
Yeah, yeah.
here's the issue why that that whole paradigm is a problem. It starts to creep inward, like more because because there's a stigma around surrounding being a quote unquote cringe weeb, and nobody wants to be that. Now, if you post a picture of like your anime figure shelf on Twitter, you run you run the very real risk of being called a cringe weeb by some rando. And to me it's kind of a funny thing because I regularly you'll if in one of those pictures you'll be looking at like 3 grand worth of anime figures at least. So it's like also has the income to be able to afford to have a whole bunch of very expensive plastic anime figures, but yeah, sure, cringe, whatever. That's the same kind of real broke energy that I see when you remember this is back
Also, it's
when like
not your business to know where that person, unless that person is stealing money. It's not your business to know how he got the money too.
what what that it really doesn't even get that far. Like nobody ever asks where anyone gets the money for this because nobody draws that connection in their head that yeah, this person has the disposable income. So it's not even that this person's like making enough money. They're making enough money to afford all of their expenses and then spend $3,000 frivolously on plastic anime girl figures. It's like yeah, you ever see that there is this image macro a while back of this kind of heavy set dude in the glasses. I think he was holding up the V and had like a whole bunch of like Sailor Moon and different shit. And the caption was like, "Yeah, this guy. Sure, this guy looks like a nerd, looks like a loser, but he's also somehow able to afford a whole bunch of this stuff. He's able to surround himself. He's able to afford to surround himself with things that make him happy."
Mm.
So, is it is it correct to shit on him for being a nerd? It, it's why I jokingly like to call it real broke energy because what what kind of person shits on the expensive leisure purchases of another person other than someone whose paradigm around money is so wrecked that they can't be happy for someone
You're not
who's
allowed to buy
happy for their
anime.
who's happy
You're not
for their
allowed to buy anime girl figures, but it's okay to spend $600 on a Chigoken Guy King.
well that and that's kind of it. Like
I'm not even
you
exaggerating about it. They just announced
oh
a $600 Guy King sold Chigoken with a Daimakukaru,
yeah,
the big dragon.
so that's kind of the thing is like oh you have so much money, why would you spend it on X, Y, and Z that I wouldn't spend it on? And that's the real portion of it. But so that all goes back to this paradigm where you can't genuinely like even the whole Moai thing, even though the Moai war has kind of been won, we still have a lot left to go. Like we've gotten to the point where we've stopped talking about whether or not Kaon is voyeuristic, and we actually can talk about like the 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 art direction and whatnot, all the important stuff. the stuff that actually matters as far as having a discussion about an anime. But in terms of the whole moe thing, a lot of it is still it's still kind of a meme. Like there are definitely circles in which people's enjoyment of this stuff is very genuine. Like if you look at like, the Atasha circle, if the deeper you go inside the niche, the more genuine people are, is what I found. And this is across the board. So like, and this is because here's what I really actually think. I think a lot of the people who are the most vocal about liking ecchi as a joke, or liking moe as a joke, I don't think they're anywhere near representative of most Western anime fans. I think so. Like you'll be at the convention, and you step up to the Hendane booth, and you just join the crowd, and you're there shoulder to shoulder with other mostly dudes browsing raunchy hentai doujinshi and art books.
Why is it there? Shouldn't they be looking for a real girl then?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, that's the thing. None of those people exist in or around that space. Like I don't think I've ever encountered one of those people like at a convention or at somewhere where like I don't think I've encountered one of those people outside of the internet. That's what I'm saying. And I think
I encountered someone like that at a con who called me creepy because you know I made a certain joke, and he was from Toy Box DX anyway.
Oh, okay. So he's practically an internet person. But so
years ago anyway,
you'll step up to the Hedone booth like that. You'll step up to the Faku booth, and again,
which is ironic because he was by a booth for Kotobukiya figures.
I mean, hey, I think it's kind of I always think it's hilarious when.
No, all I said to him is like, oh, I know Japanese and I know the words like paizuri and all that. It's it's kind of silly to say, but
it's a joke. It's obviously a joke. But I
just wanted to clarify what the situation was.
I think it's really weird when people have that kind of prudish, shameful attitude in places where they're not 10 steps, like they're not 10 footsteps away from like naked anime girl figures or dakimakura or doujinshi or hentai manga or just straight up ecchi manga or ecchi anime. Like this is something I don't get, and to your point, VZ, I don't get why a lot of the people in like critic roles don't seem to have an appreciation for this aspect. The sexual aspect of anime and manga, otaku culture, and all that. Because a lot of these
people came from. I got kind of an answer for that. Partial answer, not fully. A lot of these people came into it. It's what you gotta look at what they came into it from. A lot of these people came into it stuff like. Hold on. Connection issue. Come on. Okay. A lot of these people came for stuff like Miyazaki stuff, Satoshi Kon stuff.
That's cool in
Um,
the gang, and don't get me wrong, Miyazaki and especially Satoshi Kon put out some great stuff. Fucking uh, Mamoru Hosoda, all that shit, excellent stuff. If you're not on board with what has been a core aspect of the medium and the culture, literally since the culture began, I don't know why you're in a critic role. I don't know why you stay in that role. I don't know why. Like
yeah.
I,
Also,
I, I
people
don't
act like
know.
Daily is a new thing, and it's like, no,
It's
it's
not.
been there for
Isn't
almost a deception if you think about it.
wasn't the first erotic anime a
Yes, it
lolicon anime?
was.
Yeah.
Yes,
So then
it was
it's not.
literally called Lolita
Yeah.
Anime
So it's not anything new. People just
by Wonder Kids.
so
The-
that's my issue. Is this has been a core aspect of the subculture literally since the subculture began.
yeah. But
And
see,
I
it's
and
because of the control of information from these anime that they don't want you to know that.
I
They don't.
I think
They
it's
don't want you.
hilarious. I find that paradigm hilarious. I'm not sure if I 100% believe it because it, if if they think they're going to control the information to the point where people don't know that stuff like strike witches exists, uh it, I got some news for these people. It's called the internet, and we can basically look up anything at this point. That's part of the thing that I don't remember where I wrote this, whether it was on. I think I wrote this on Iyashike, but I don't even quite remember the the knowledge surrounding anime has been so widespread and democratized for quite a while now that I genuinely don't understand the what purpose that highly knowledgeable but curmudgeonly people serve. I could understand previously if it was like even back into like the mid 2000s where if you wanted to learn about anime, you had to you had to deal with listening to someone who was kind of an asshole
Mm.
because that person just knew a lot about anime that was not like they had arcane knowledge. Like they were the fucking tome keeper of esoteric anime knowledge that only a few people outside of Japan know. I understand that paradigm. That's not a necessary paradigm anymore because not only is the internet widespread, not only is everyone carrying around a magic rectangle in their pocket linked to all the knowledge of the world, there's a lot of knowledge about anime that has been translated or is being translated. And like the 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 necessity for highly knowledgeable but kind of asshole-ish people is waning very quickly.
It was funny on Toy Box DX. It was a certain someone who was like, "How could they, you know, how could they have a show like Strike Witches or something? Isn't that illegal?" And it's like I'm like thinking, it's Funimation. It's licensed by Funimation.
Well, that's really the thing is you've got you basically got two kinds of people who are in this like virulently anti-etchy sort of thing. You've got people like the person you just mentioned were basically just ignorant. Like in not ignorant in an insulting way, but they just don't know. And that group is very quickly shrinking because
Yeah,
like
I'm glad for that. But
but
we got the other.
you got the other group who knows they don't they're not ignorant, they just don't like it, and for some reason want to stop other people from liking it?
Well, I noticed an age group aspect too, because it's like the first one, the like the Toy Box DX people. Those people were obviously either my age or much older, mostly older than me. And the other contingent of people, the ones you're talking about, those tend to be younger than me, much younger than me. So what is it? Is I like? Am I just in this in between demographic of ages that just had no problem with?
Well, so I find that the first group is definitely older, but I find that the second group runs the gamut. Like if someone is much older, they're more likely to be in the first group, but if they're like maybe a little bit older than maybe your age and younger, they're likely to be in the second group. Cuz it's not a matter of age, it's a matter of time in the subculture. Cuz fucking like the more time you spend in the subculture, you're gonna not be able to avoid like seeing cute girl anime or ecchi anime, fan service anime and shit. Like that stuff's just gonna that shit is just gonna pop up eventually. Even and really it depending on when you got into anime, it's a matter of chance. Like I I witnessed Tenchi Muyo back in the Toonami days. But someone who kind of missed Tenchi Muyo, or maybe got into Toonami a little bit later than I did, or something like that. Maybe they might have caught something else. Maybe they might have caught like certain parts of Fooly Cooly on Adult Swim, or maybe they might have caught like certain parts of this show or that show, and that that kind of introduced them to, okay, some of these shows have a sexual element to them. And then from there it's either I I can appreciate this or I can respect this, or I don't really have any respect for this. And then further on onto that on that paradigm is I don't really have any respect for this. I'm going to seek works that don't have this in it, or I don't really have respect for this. I'm going to seek works that don't have this in it, and also for some reason try and prevent other people from liking it.
Oh, I kind of noticed that one too. No, but the first group seemed to be more the group I'm talking about seemed to be more of a sort of lack of exposure and knowledge because of their sort of coming in was through stuff that was mostly like, and a lot of these people were toy people.
Yeah, that's it's like I said, they're ignorant, not in an
Yeah,
insulting
it's
way.
mostly
They just don't know.
yeah.
But so it the the
I don't know
shift.
why Matt Alt was so ignorant, despite living in Japan about this stuff.
Well,
It's like,
so some people are ignorant. Some people act ignorant, and again, not in an insulting way, but some people don't know. Some people
willfully
act like they
ignorant or
don't
just
know. But so outside of that, though, I see the shift that I see in the actual subculture as it exists is that most people who aren't painfully online, they either like it, they're okay with it, or they don't like it but don't cause problems for people who do like it. I honestly, and this is, I wouldn't even say this is something I've been on for a while, but this is something that I've definitely really noticed over the past year and a half or so. The as an anime fan, or as a Western otaku, whatever you want to call it, the less time you spend on places like Twitter, the happier you tend to be, because not only are you just thrown in the generalized social media like wasteland with people who habitually harass anime fans, you're also thrown into the unified social media wasteland with anime fans who habitually harass other anime fans for liking the wrong anime.
Yeah.
Is that like is there does there exist really another nerd subculture that is less unified than anime? And like so and not really on some culture war shit either, but that like do like comic fans like legitimately attack other comic fans for liking like oh
No, the
Squirrel
creators
Girl,
of
you like Squirrel Girl, I'm gonna
creators
try
are the
and
ones
dox
doing
you.
that. That's the hilarious thing today it's the creators are the ones harassing the fans.
True, but yo, imagine if like the creators could manage to get the fans to do that for them. They need. That's the thing. That's the thing about anime subculture in particular. Online anime subculture is that a lot of it's unprovoked and is based on like weird stupid shit that only happens on the internet.
Yeah.
It,
I gotta read this comment from someone that just came in
go for it.
called Anime Pops. At my age, you need a story too, or the comedy has to be more than just rely on ecchi alone.
I agree
Um,
for the most part.
for the most part, I mean, but
There's there
there's you can still like sort of analyze how the ecchi is done because it's like I was just telling you about the Maid Dragon. Like there's a lot of there's way more bouncing in this one than the original show, and it's like oh it's an aesthetics thing that I noticed,
well
but
it's a
other people either wouldn't notice or they would and they would that would bother them.
also there you can also like
You know,
you can take a look at the ecchi itself. Is like are the characters designed well? Is the way they're drawn appealing?
yes, yes. I was gonna get to that as well.
Like it, there are definitely those, but all of the best ecchi anime come with a story. All the best ecchi comedy anime comes with comedy that doesn't just rely on TNA. It's like Strike Witches is a great ecchi anime, but it also is a really good action anime. And part of it is it's that thing we always talk about where they're trying people try to portray ecchi as something that is like tacked on, like it's not an intrinsic part of the anime. Like it's the whole thing is it was good despite the fan service, as though the fan service isn't
That
as though
no
the fan
inherent yeah.
service is like it's like a hanger on. It was like bolted on after the fact, and wasn't created as a legitimate part of the anime because a lot of I I rarely see, and I do feel like I tried to do this back when I was reviewing anime, but I don't know if I succeeded. I rarely see when people review or do criticism of ecchi anime, people actually talking about okay, how were the characters drawn and how does that like does that appeal? Are the characters rendered nicely? to have the desired effect on the viewer. And part of it is I feel like that's difficult to talk about, not because people are going to get shit on for it, but it's not easy to put into words.
A show that,
It's
like,
something
for
you
me,
feel more so than you think about. At least as far as at least as far as I'm my experience with it.
I was gonna say a show for me where I liked both the the fan service aspects and the story was Valkyrie Drive.
Mm.
So it didn't just have one or the other; it had both elements that worked in tandem. Because that's the other thing. The fan service a lot. I know they think it's tacked on, but in a lot of ways, the fandom is tandem within the story, and it works. It's not just something. But again, I guess to them, it's like, how did you say it? That used to put it like how anime was like put together.
Yeah,
Like
they think, like, when people talk about it was good despite the fan service, it's like they're portraying anime like it was made in a factory, like a car. Like this part like the crankshaft comes from this country, and the gear shift knob comes from this country, and like the spark plug comes from this country, and then they ship it all to the factory, and then they put it all together like in an assembly line, like a car. And so, okay, this is the part where the fan service goes in. All right, this is the part where the romance comedy element goes in. This is the part where the harem element goes in, and then it rolls off the assembly line. Not a thing that was created as one thing that has all these elements in it because that's what it is. Like I wrote an article for Yashike a while back. This is originally an article from Neon the magazine, if I'm not mistaken, on what actually makes fan service work.
oh yeah, I remember that.
Because here, the issue is that people don't quite understand what the purpose of fan service is. And what it is do you remember that sequence from the very, like, this is like the last 5 or so minutes of the last episode of Evangelion,
Yes.
where there's this alternate reality sequence? Do you remember that, like, no less than like 3 or 4 different, not just works of media, but like media franchises spun off of that?
Girlfriend of Steel.
Girlfriend of Steel the Second, Angelic Days, the Shinji Ikari Raising Project. Like, that's the essence of fan service. That it invites the audience to interact with the work. Like, the work puts out that invite, and then the audience gives their own input.
Yeah, it peeked into an alternate world with those characters, and then the fans themselves made, and including official works.
Yeah, like no less than
onto that.
3 official works came out of that. But then you also have the whole doujinshi culture, where anime will create these characters, and then the fans will take that up and do their own thing with it. And on some level, Ecchi kind of serves both purposes, where there are instances where it may subvert the character, thus inviting the audience to interact with the work because the work is willing to back down a little bit in order to give the audience that invitation. Or it's an intrinsic part of the story it's trying to tell, the world it's trying to build, what have you.
Well, I was saying even like Gundam is an aspect of fan service.
Oh yeah,
What made it work at the time was you're adding to the lore.
exactly.
You know, you can now make it where I'm gonna customize the Zaku because I'm gonna be the Zaku pilot, and I'm making
Yeah.
my own. I'm gonna make my own weird prototype. I'm gonna.
Yeah, so I think people lose the connection between that and like fan service in general. And so I think if more people were in tune with that, I think people would find it easier to talk about fan service. But again, the sexual element gets in the way because people get really weird about about sexuality in media, especially when it comes to like anime shit. But to be clear, this is people online. The further niche you get, and I just find this in general. I think this is another article on Yashike. I'm very quickly approaching the point where I don't have to say anything original ever again, and can just point to articles on Yashike or articles on Otaku Entrepreneur instead of saying shit. But the further you niche yourself, the better the people around you are, and the more importantly, the less you encounter like shitty people in the subculture. Because the people around you will be more they'll be more like you, they'll understand you more, and they will also be much less incentivized to be an asshole to you for for no reason. Like when I talk about niching yourself, I'm talking about getting involved in like subcultures within the anime subculture. So like there's the Itasha subculture, there's like the anime figure collecting subculture. There's all these sorts of more performative things that you can do inside the anime subculture. And this is including like getting if you're part of I wouldn't say a community because there used to be communities, and there probably still are, but like communities that are built around the appreciation of ecchi and the appreciation of sexuality in anime, stuff like that.
Still on 4chan.
Certainly, but that place has its own issues.
Yeah,
but yeah, I think that if we're talking about the shift in attitude, I think that's really happening in places where you can't see it because it's not like people talking about it.
yeah, but I still would like to see it in the official journalistic places to sort of like I like this because of the fan service. And I'll tell you why this is good fan service versus something else.
Honestly, I'm not sure I care about that anymore, and the reason why is because I'm I don't think well, number one, I've said this before. I don't think that anime criticism, especially as it exists now, really has any value, like at all. Like I think it's certainly interesting to talk about anime. I think it's certainly interesting to talk about like to talk about its production and the directorial techniques and whatnot and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like the a lot of the ways anime criticism has been used, especially, have actually just done damage, and the the positives don't outweigh the negatives. I don't think we've gotten a whole lot in general out of anime criticism to outweigh the damage that has been done by its abuse. So I I don't really particularly care if people in like journalistic spaces especially like proclaim their love for Ecchi, because at the end of the day the the reality is in the numbers. I I put it this way. I care a whole lot more about people accurately reporting what people actually like based on what's actually going on in the market than having a prominent figure talk about how much they love cute girl ecchi anime. Like I would much prefer if yeah I don't particularly care if prominent. And the other thing is, if we're gonna get the you know what, no, thinking about it just now, I think that the issue is not whether or not there are prominent people who are on board with ecchi. I think the issue is that the prominent people that we've had for the past 20 some years are they're not enthusiastic. Like I was talking earlier in the show about the idea of the highly knowledgeable but curmudgeonly otaku sage who has all that arcane knowledge. And I think that the best possible paradigm we could do to move forward from that is to move on to valuing enthusiasm rather than knowledge, because knowledge can always be taught. But if you have someone enthusiastic in a position of influence, they can influence other people to be equally enthusiastic, and someone with knowledge can teach them. But I think the issue is that there are definitely people in positions of influence who are not enthusiastic, and then there are definitely people in positions of influence who have some level of hostility toward enthusiasm for things they don't like. And I think that's the real issue. So, is that the show?
I think it is.
That is the show. The email address is ntrradio@gmail.com. The website is ntrradio.net. Check out VZ's stuff at vzmk2moimekagatai.wordpress.com. He's got the Big Book of Idols. That's at thebigbookofIdols.com. You can check that out. You can find my stuff at iyashike.moe and otakuentrepreneur.com. If you go to otakuentrepreneur.com and in the upper right, click on the book link, that'll take you to the page where you can buy my book, Otaku Entrepreneur. Check out the Bakugaijin Show, Otaku Midnight, Asobi FM, and the Geeky Panda stuff at thegeekypanda.net, because all their stuff is really good. And hit me up on Twitter at TAnubis, VZ up on Twitter at VZMK2, the show at NTR_radio. I'm Tom Force Anubis.
I'm VZ Mark II.
And even though I can't come up with an outro every time we say it, this is NTR Radio.